Hello and welcome to a thought for the day. Today, Monday, the 11th of May. I want to reflect a little on our present condition and on that of others far from us. In doing so, I'd like to refer to St. Luke's Gospel, chapter 10, verses 25 to 28. They will be very familiar to you. They form the preamble to the parable of the Good Samaritan. In the New Revised Standard Version, they read as follows. Just then a lawyer stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he said, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" He said to him, "What is written in the law? What do you read there?" He answered, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." And he said to him, "You have given the right answer. Do this and you will live." Just then a lawyer stood up to test Jesus. In the King James Version, this sentence reads, "And behold, a certain lawyer stood up and tempted him, saying, 'Master, what shall I do to inherit eternal life?'" We can hardly read that word, tempted, without being reminded of the diabolical temptations in the desert, which makes this lawyer sound evil. Even the word test in the modern translation can sound less than friendly. And I've often heard people cite this as an example of the establishment of the time trying to trick Jesus into convicting himself of some sort of blasphemy. It's nothing of the sort. If the man was a lawyer, that means that he was a student of the law of Moses, of the Torah, and of its accumulated commentaries. It was, and is to this day, the rabbinical tradition for students of the Torah to advance understanding by challenging each other with questions such as, "It says this in the scriptures, but what does it actually mean?" So far from being a hostile challenge, the lawyer's words constituted a standard way of advancing his own and everyone else's deeper understanding of God's purposes by constant question and answer. This is perhaps not unique to the biblical context. People ask questions when they're thirsty for knowledge and understanding. This will be especially obvious to anyone who has sat with a toddler who is never satisfied with the last answer, but always comes back with, "Why?" In the passage in question, Jesus answers in classical rabbinical tradition by getting the lawyer himself to recite from the law, where he rightly quotes the principle of first loving God and then one's neighbor as oneself. Then, like the toddler, the lawyer comes back with another question, "And who is my neighbor?" Cue the parable of the Good Samaritan. It has been claimed that during his spell as a sub-editor on the Times, the late Claude Cockburn and colleagues competed to write the dullest printed headline. Cockburn only won once this little office competition, with the headline, "Small Earthquake in Chile, Not Many Dead." Now bear in mind that Cockburn died in 1981, when the world of information was very different. Chile sounded like an impossibly distant place. Remember also that when Neville Chamberlain in the 1930s was resisting intervention after the Nazi invasion of Czechoslovakia, he referred to this as "a quarrel in a faraway country between people of whom we know nothing." Nowadays, thanks not least to the internet and international air travel, few places seem beyond our reach, and yet, it remains the case that troubles in other countries can affect us far less than events at home. One person dying in our own neighborhood can affect us more profoundly than news of hundreds dying on the other side of the world. The parable of the Good Samaritan neatly defined the neighbor as one who helps when help is required, a friend in time of need, and it emphasizes that differences in ethnicity and belief are irrelevant in such cases. The same is true of physical distance. We are all feeling deprived just now, deprived of everyday pleasures such as having a cup of coffee while sitting in Starbucks or Costa. I should add, other coffee outlets are available. A coffee in such places routinely costs about £3. If you didn't buy a coffee in one of those shops for 10 working days, you would have saved £30. We have been locked down now for 8 weeks, so you can do the arithmetic. Today marks the start of Christian Aid Week. In normal times, remember them? Christian aid collections would be taking place in churches and many other places throughout the country. They use the money to relieve poverty in many countries. That is, they use our money to help people, human beings, our neighbours, in desperate circumstances. You may have been reflecting, I suspect we all have, on what has been taken from us by the coronavirus. We'll all have our own lists, but they probably include things like physical contact with family and friends, going out for meals together, going on holiday to attractive places, and just leaving our homes when and where we choose with no concern about taking public transport or being in a crowd. It's true, we have been deprived of those things and others, but we have not been deprived of safe homes, affordable food, reliable supplies of power and clean water, good sanitation, a functioning national health service, free to all, a citizen police force, and a functioning democracy. Millions of people around the world now face the new threat of the coronavirus, but they have never enjoyed those things that we take for granted. This year, Christian Aid cannot raise funds in the usual way, so I make no apology for urging you right now to make a donation to that wonderful charity which shows the love of Christ in action amongst our brothers and sisters in need. How much have you saved since the lockdown? In theatre tickets, restaurant meals, holidays, coffees? Faraway countries of whom we know nothing? That was Chamberlain in the 1930s, but here was John Donne in 1623. You've heard it many times, I know, but it seems especially pertinent today and bears repeating. No man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. If a clod be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less, as well as if a promontory were, as well as if a manor of thy friends or of thine own were. Any man's death diminishes me, because I am involved in mankind, and therefore never send to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. In this country, we still have much to be grateful for, whilst our distant neighbours suffer. You can help. You can do something about it. So please do give to Christian Aid, and whilst you do so, count your blessings. Count your blessings? I have a feeling that Ali Ponsford Hill, soprano in our choir, accompanied remotely by her father David Hill, could say it better than I. Thank you, and God bless you.